we did the proof of the quadratic formula, or at least we attempted to do the proof of the quadratic formula. If it got too messy, you can find it in most any book, and you should try to follow along and see how the completing the square could be done once for all and prove the quadratic formula. But I want you to get used to the quadratic formula, and I have a program to help you get used to that and to find out what is meant by the discriminant. So we're going to look at that program, the quadratic formula. Now, one of the things that you must learn how to do is get the formula. Look how old this program is, 1999. Early on, in the first 5 years, I thought we've got to have a program for the quadratic formula. And I had a pre-calculus class that was kind enough to sing it for me. So if you click on I don't know the formula, watch out, it gets kind of loud. And I'm sorry. But we'll play the formula here. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Maybe I should play that again with the sound down. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Well, you can sing the quadratic formula to the row, row, row your boat, and it can be sung to Pop Goes the Weasel as well. Get it learned. You have to know it, because whenever you have to solve an x-squared equation, if you can't factor it readily, you can always resort to the quadratic formula. Now, the first thing that you've got to do is to figure out what is the value of a, b, and c. And one of the things that I prefer is that the a, b, and c, a is the coefficient of the x squared term, and b is the coefficient of the x, and c is the constant term. And you have to get this into ax squared plus bx plus c form. And one of the things I advise you to do is always make the a be positive. Now, we are lucky here that this came up to be negative. Actually, I can make it positive if in my mind I think about multiplying both sides of the equation by -1. Or I could think about adding 7x squared to both sides. Then there would be 0 equals, and then I could just think about it all being over there. So I'm going to do that. Notice I didn't let this scroll bar go to the negatives. It would still be in standard form if we put negatives there, but so many mistakes are made. So I made it so that this one has to be positive. So we have 7x squared. If we added 7x squared to both sides, then we'd have minus 7x and minus 5. Check, we win. Easy enough to identify a, b, and c. Now, we're going to put down what a is. A is 7, b is -7, and c is -5. And we check, and it says you're right. And now, what's going to come up is this question, find the value of the discriminant. Now, I know it's not exactly politically correct to be discriminatory, but it's okay in math, because we sometimes need to know whether a quadratic equation has one solution, two solutions, or no real solutions. And we can find that if we calculate the discriminant. And in the quadratic formula, the discriminant is that part that goes underneath the radical. There's the marker. I brought it up, and now I should be able to draw on here. Now, the discriminant, if you remember the quadratic formula, x equals -b, I'll repeat it for you, plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And this part right here that's underneath the radical is called the discriminant. And if we know what sign the discriminant is, it tells us a lot about the solutions to our equation. And if we know the number, that will even tell us even more. So we want to find out what b squared minus 4ac is. I tell kids to write down parentheses b squared minus 4 times a. Put parentheses down. Parentheses are your friends. Put the numbers in here. Negative b squared is negative 7 squared minus 4a, 7c, negative 5. And then let's figure this out. This would be 49. When you put the parentheses down, you're not as likely to make a mistake on squaring that negative 7. This is going to be positive. 4 times 5 is negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20, plus, so it'll be plus, and it'll be 20 times 7, 140. So it looks like my discriminant is 189. I've got to minimize this and put 189 in here and check, make sure my arithmetic. Check, and it says that's correct. And now what does this mean? Now, let's focus. That discriminant is the part that's under the radical, b squared minus 4ac. You can't take radical negative number in the real number world. So if it turns out that the discriminant is negative, it isn't in our case, then there are no real roots. That's if it's negative. If it turns out by some miracle to be a 0, then you have plus or minus 0, and there's only going to be one real root. Otherwise, there are 2 real roots. And there's a divide here, whether we have 2 real rational roots or 2 real irrational roots. Now, the rational roots will show up if the number is 1, 4, 9, 16. It's not one of the perfect squares. It's not a perfect square. 4, 9, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 25. 5 squared, 6 squared, 36. 7 squared, 49. 8 squared, 64. 9 squared, 81. 10 squared is 100. 11 squared, 121. 144. And I don't know the ones after that. But I think if it's not one of those perfect squares going on forever and ever, then it's irrational. So let's minimize this. I'm going to say it's too irrational. And it says, good for you, been able to predict. So now we're going to just have one last attempt to make sure. Look, I've got the quadratic formula, b squared minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac square root of divided by 2a. And if you can put all these numbers in these parentheses and do the arithmetic, you will get this 2 solutions, one from the plus and one from the minus. So it would be negative b, negative 7, negative 7 again, a, 7, c, negative 5, divided by 2a, 7. And we have here, once we've just done the discriminant is 189, all of this is 189. And so we end up having 7 plus or minus square root of 189 divided by 14 are the 2 answers, but some of the 3 could come out of there. That's 9 and 21. 9 and 21. So it looks like it's 7 plus or minus 3 radical 21 over 14. And the answers would be 7 plus 3 radical 21 over 14 and 7 minus 3 radical 21 over 14. Not something we would get by factoring. Maybe we better do another one. Let's minimize the marker and try again. Oh, another negative. So we would want this to be 1. I'm thinking of adding 1 to both sides, and then, oh, I'd have to add negative 5 to both sides, so this would be negative 5, because this would have to go, and then this would be negative 10. Get used to putting your equations in standard form. Check, we win. And now the value of a is 1, value of b is negative 5, the value of c is negative 10. Check, we win. Let's evaluate this discriminant. It's b squared minus 4 times A times C. And let's put a blue marker in here. B squared would be negative 5 squared minus 4A, C, negative 10. That looks 25 plus 40 equals 65. So I'm going to minimize that. It's 65. What was I thinking? Check, we win. Now 65 is not negative. It's not 0. It's not a perfect square. So there are 2 irrational roots. And we'd have to work this problem out. We'd have to go negative 5, negative 5. A would be 1. Gets a little boring, but be careful. 1. And we check, and it says we're right. To finish the problem, we would just work this out. A lot more busy work. We want to make sure that you understand what you have to do. I have a little thing up here you could use to do your arithmetic on, but I forgot to clear the button, so I'll have to go back and change this program and fix it. Take care and learn how to use the quadratic formula. Bye.